It's the Attorney General speaking. Let's listen in.
This is our last day in our case against Donald Trump for persistent and repeated fraud, illegality. This case has never been about politics or personal vendetta or about name-calling. This case is about the facts and the law. And Mr. Donald Trump violated the law. And as you know, the judge has already found that he, in fact, violated the law for repeated fraud over a period of years. And so I want everyone to know that the personal attacks really don't bother me. The fact is that this trial has shown, and we have produced evidence about the scope, the scale, the depth, the breadth of the illegality, the fraud that personally enriched Donald Trump and his family. I want to thank the judge. I want to thank my team. I want to thank opposing counsel. But at the end of the day, the point is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how rich you are, that no one is above the law, and that the law applies to all of us equally and fairly. I trust that justice will be done, and I'm confident in that. And I'm extremely proud of the case that we put on. Good evening and thank you.
What's the scope of the damage that you believe is going to come here?
Closing remarks there from Attorney General James, relatively brief. That's what we've been waiting on. Sometimes we've heard her speak actually more expansively, but she is obviously trying to signal that the courtroom is where they are doing most of the talking. She didn't delve into the specifics of the case and the numbers or much of what we've heard and what our experts have been reporting out. So, Lisa, you're nearby there, and we would just watch. I'm told, we don't have Lisa. David Kelly, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, joins us. Our panel, Emily and Tim, are still here. David, as mentioned, that was pretty careful remarks. When you ran the SDNY, you would often say, and others would say, look, don't expect dramatic speeches or long speeches because the trial's where you're going to hear the arguments. Now that we've wrapped here in court today, how strong do you think the case is, and do you expect this judge to go all the way up to the $300 million mark in the fine?
You know, I have to. It's a good question, Ari, because look, the two big points for the defense, aside from the whole political motivation and so forth, which yet to nowhere, nor did the theatrics by the defendant in the case get you anywhere. But the two big issues are the intent to defraud, and they point to Michael Cohen as being an incredible witness. And then no harm, no foul. I think there's some, in the latter argument, I think there's maybe some weight there for that could really temper the judge in terms of how high he goes. So I do think there's something to that argument.
Interesting.
You know, look, it's a hard thing to call. It's you know, how he's going to go on this. But I think viscerally, if I'm the judge, I probably have a little bit of that weighing on my mind. I don't have a victim. I have banks who didn't admit to being victims of fraud. I have a system in place where both everybody plays the same game, where they juice it up on the former president's side, and the banks say, yeah, sure, that's what the value is. Let's take our own look and see what we come up with. But in any event, we're going to give him the money because he's a big whale. And we're going to run with it.
Well, David, you're referring to the classic "don't hate the player, hate the game" defense.
Yeah, I think that's there's something to that, and I do think that look, there's really no hard and fast formula. I think he could say, you know, the judge could say, let's take the formula that says, take the interest rate they would have gotten had they been honest in their disclosures. And give the delta, pay the difference between the application of that interest rate and what they ultimately got on the inflated financials. So there is a kind of a hard and fast formula out there for him to use. And I think that would take him, you know, as you suggest, sky high. But I do think that viscerally, you have to say, geez, it's hard to kind of apply that when I don't have the victim and I have everybody kind of playing the same game. but it's a corrupt system, so it can't go unpunished, even if it's the game everybody plays. But at the same time, I think that does suggest that maybe not going as high as an appropriate formula would permit is appropriate here in the judge's discretion.
Interesting. Lisa?
Yeah, I think David is right. First of all, the Attorney General has given that formula to the judge. That's how they get to $168 million, roughly, Ari, of the $370 million that they're seeking in disgorgement here. I also agree with David that they're not likely to get all of that $370 million. There were a number of mitigating factors that the judge was really interested in today, and I just want to name one of them. One of them was whether or not Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump had the requisite intent to result in some of the relief that the Attorney General's office is seeking from them. And part of that disgorgement award has to do with their own profits. For example, when the old post office lease was sold, Donald Trump himself made roughly $140 million, but each of the adult children got a roughly $4 million distribution from that. The judge was very interested in the relief against the kids, and particularly against Donald Trump Jr., who he said he saw no evidence that Donald Trump Jr. actually intended to defraud anyone. And the Attorney General's response to that was, well, if anything, he exhibited a level of recklessness that is so high that he should at least be prohibited from being an officer or director of this company for 5 years. So there's some hope that he can be rehabilitated. But if you stick your head in the sand, does that mean that you didn't intend this? When you are as willfully ignorant as Donald Trump Jr. was, that doesn't mean that you're not culpable in some way. So I do agree you're going to see a haircut to that $370 million figure for a number of reasons, not just because the delta between the interest he paid and the interest they would have paid will strike someone as maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah.